What's up guys, Sagi here and welcome to another Tech Gear Talk. Today we're going to compare two of my favorite cameras, the Sony a6400 and the Canon M50. The Sony a6400 is a really impressive APS-C sensor camera which replaced the very popular a6300 and was released in February of 2019. The Canon M50 on the other hand is Canon's first consumer mirrorless camera to offer 4K video. I'm going to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of both cameras when it comes to both photography and video, and hopefully I can help you decide which option is best for you. My goal with every product comparison is to give you a detailed overview of the features of the product and then compare them in a way that relates to real life use. Alright, so let's get going. I'm going to get into the details for each aspect of these two cameras, but I quickly want to go over some overall key features in case you're just starting your research. The a6400 has a really nice magnesium alloy body with sealed buttons and dials. It has a 24 megapixel APS-C CMOS sensor and the Bions X image processor. It can shoot up to 4K 30 frames per second and 1080p or Full HD at up to 120 frames per second. The a6400 uses a hybrid autofocus system with 425 phase and contrast detection points. It has a 3-inch 921.6 thousand dot flip LCD screen and can internally record 4K 30 at 420 or externally at 422. It has a nice 2.36 million dot OLED electronic viewfinder, and it can shoot continuously at up to 11 frames per second, has an awesome expandable ISO at up to 102,400. Now, the M50 is another compact and portable mirrorless camera. It has a 24.1 megapixel APS-C CMOS sensor and it uses Canon's new Digic 8 processor. It can shoot video at up to 4K at 24 frames per second and Full HD or 1080p at up to 60 frames per second. It uses Canon's super nice dual pixel autofocus system, has a 3-inch fully articulating full touchscreen LCD, and combination image stabilization uses 5-axis digital image stabilization with lens-based IS. There's a really nice 2.36 million dot OLED electronic viewfinder, and it has Wi-Fi with NFC and Bluetooth, so you can easily move images to your mobile device and have full remote control over the camera. I want to start out by talking about the sensor and the processor. So both the a6400 and the M50 come with a 24 megapixel APS-C CMOS sensor. The a6400 sensor is BSI or backside illuminated, meaning that some of the elements were moved to the back of the sensor with the goal being better low light performance. And Sony did a fantastic job with this sensor, and in my experience, it performed better in low light than the M50 sensor. The Sony APS-C sensor has a crop factor of 1.5x, and the Canon APS-C sensor has a crop factor of 1.6x. That means that if I put a 50mm lens on the a6400 and apply a 1.5x crop factor, it will give me a 35mm equivalent field of view of a 75mm lens. On the other hand, if I put that same lens on the M50, I have to apply a crop factor of 1.6x, so I'm getting an 80mm equivalent field of view. This means that the Sony provides a slightly wider angle of view, but it's not a big enough difference to be a deciding factor for me. In terms of sensor, I'm going to give the a6400 the edge because it has improved low light performance and a slightly lower crop factor. As far as processors, the a6400 uses the Bions X processor and the M50 uses the Digic 8 processor. And the combination of sensor and processor on both of these cameras produced images and videos that I was really happy with. In addition, general menu operation is fast for both cameras. Both have very quick startup, and things like image preview and video playback are nice and fast. Now, because of how I shoot, one of the features that I look at for every camera that I get is continuous or burst shooting. You can just point the camera at a subject, hold down the shutter, and the camera will just keep firing. And this is a nice feature if you're photographing sports, pets, kids running around, or any fast-moving subjects. Of course, the more frames you have per second, the more exposures you'll have to pick from later on. The a6400 can shoot at up to 11 frames per second in burst mode, and the M50 can shoot at up to 10 frames per second. When we look at buffer memory, we see that the Sony reports 99 JPEG and 46 RAW images for the a6400 versus 36 JPEG and 10 RAW images for the M50. To sum things up, as far as sensor and processor, I'm going to give the edge to the a6400 because it has better low light performance, slightly faster burst shooting, and a larger buffer. Moving on, one of the most important things for me with any tool that I use is ergonomics, and I look at that both in terms of handling and functionality. As far as size goes, both of these cameras are small, which makes them a great option when it comes to portability. I always consider the camera size in terms of performance, ergonomics, and portability. Both cameras are about the same size, but I like the grip on the a6400 a little better. It's a little bit deeper and easier and more comfortable to hold. The a6400 also feels like it has better build quality, and it has some weather sealing to make it dust and moisture resistant. As far as battery life, the a6400 uses the older NP-FW50 battery, and it's rated for 360 shots using the viewfinder and 410 shots using the LCD. On the other hand, the M50 uses the LPE12 battery, and it's rated for 235 shots using both the viewfinder and the LCD. Here I'm giving the clear edge to the a6400. It's not that it has good battery life, it's just that the M50 has really poor battery life. One feature that I like about the a6400 is that it can be used while plugged in. So if you record long video sessions or for streaming, you don't have to worry about the battery dying. The M50 has a similar feature, but you have to use a coupler. And if you're interested, I have a video that shows you how to do that and helps with the M50 poor battery life. When it comes to charging, the a6400 doesn't come with a battery charger, so you have to charge the battery inside the camera. The M50, on the other hand, does come with a dedicated battery charger. If you end up buying extra batteries for the a6400, just remember that you'll also need to pick up a charger so that you can charge the additional batteries while you're using the camera. Let's talk a little about the viewfinder. Now, because the a6400's viewfinder style design, the viewfinder doesn't extend or protrude from the body, and that contributes to a more compact design. It has a 0.39-inch EVF with a magnification of 0.7. It does have the advantage of a higher selectable refresh rate of 120 frames per second. And this can lead to smoother viewing experience when panning or following a moving subject. The M50 also has a 0.39-inch viewfinder. It's a 2.36 million dot EVF, and it does protrude from the top of the camera, which makes the M50 taller. Next, I want to discuss the buttons and dials on both of these cameras. I think that if you're buying a camera and you're just using it with the factory setting, then you're really missing out. Part of what you get when you're buying a higher end camera is the ability to customize it to work better for exactly how you shoot. Now, the a6400 uses the top dial and the control wheel on the back for aperture and shutter speed. And then in addition to that, it has two custom buttons that you can use to get quick access to frequently used features. The M50 only has one top dial, and you have to use the top arrow button to alternate between aperture and shutter speed. And there are also no custom buttons to program. I'm going to give the edge here to the a6400 because having dedicated aperture and shutter speed buttons is great, and the ability to program custom buttons for how I shoot results in a more customized solution. Now, as far as how easy it is to use, I'm going to give the edge to the M50. I just found it to be a lot simpler, and it might be a better option for beginners. This is a bit of a double-edged sword here because the a6400 has so many more features that by definition make it more complex and a more powerful camera. Next, I want to talk about resolution, frame rate, and image quality. For photography, both cameras offer a 6000 by 4000 pixel image. So as far as strict head-to-head resolution, here we have a tie. Both cameras can shoot both JPEG and RAW, so you can decide how much information you want to capture depending on what you plan on doing with these images in post-production. For the price, I was really happy with the images that I got from both cameras. The photos were clean and crisp, and I thought they had great color. In terms of image quality, I'm going to give the advantage to the a6400 because it has much better low light performance. And this allowed me to shoot at higher ISO values when I needed to, and the JPEG noise reduction on the a6400 is outstanding in my opinion. I can do a more detailed image quality comparison in another video if you guys want me to, and if that's something that you're interested in, let me know in the comment section, and make sure that you're subscribed and that you have notifications turned on. Let's move on to video. The a6400 can record 4K video at 24 and 30 frames per second, and Full HD or 1080p at 24, 30, 60, and 120 frames per second. The M50 can shoot 4K only at 24 frames per second, and Full HD or 1080p at 24, 30, and 60 frames per second. 4K on the M50 is also limited by a significant additional crop factor of 1.7x, which makes it challenging to get wide shots. And then in addition to that, 4K on the M50 is hampered by the lack of dual pixel autofocus. The a6400 has a significant edge here with no crop factor for 4K 24, a 1.2x crop factor for 4K 30, which the M50 can't do at all, 120 frames per second at full HD for great slow motion, and the fact that 4K isn't impacted by inferior autofocus. The a6400 can also record up to 4K 30 422 8-bit via the clean HDMI out at 100 megabits per second. Overall, 4K footage from the a6400 is just better than the M50, so if that's a feature that you're looking for, I would suggest that you go with the Sony. For 1080p, I'm happy with the footage I got from both of these cameras at 24, 30, and 60 frames per second. But again, the Sony has the option for 120 frames per second, which gives it the edge. The a6400 also offers a video option called SNQ, which if you're not familiar with, allows you to select a frame rate ranging from 1 frame per second all the way up to 120 frames per second. The camera will then either slow it down or speed it up to 24, 30, or 60 frames per second. So if you're using SNQ 120 and you watch the clip in your camera or on your computer, it will already be slowed down, versus shooting regular 1080p 120, which you'll need to slow down in your video editor. Okay, next let's talk about time-lapse, and the a6400 offers interval shooting, which lets you have full control over your time-lapse. You can drag your shutter and you can get the exact exposure and results that you want. Once you're done shooting, you will need to take the individual photos and compile them into a time-lapse video using software. The M50 comes with in-body 4K time-lapse, meaning that the camera will actually compile the time-lapse for you so that it's ready to be viewed. This is where you're going to need to make a choice. The a6400 gives you much more control over your time-lapse and a higher resolution, but it means you have to do work in post-production. The M50 does the work for you, but you're more limited in terms of exposure. And I'm not going to pick a winner here because different users are going to have different preferences. An area where I will give the edge to the a6400 is that it has a clean HDMI out, so it's a great option when it comes to live streaming. The M50 does not have a clean HDMI out, so the only way to use it for live streaming is to either use manual focus or to use special software which will allow you to use the autofocus. Another feature that I love about the a6400 is that there's no longer a 30-minute recording limit for video. And this allows for continuous shooting of longer clips, and it removes the hassle of having to keep track of the length of the current clip so you don't accidentally reach the 30-minute mark and have your camera automatically stop recording. So if you're using a camera for YouTube or to shoot interviews, or if you're recording events, anything like that, you're gonna love the fact that you can record continuously for much longer. Moving on, the next thing I wanna talk about is autofocus. And before we get into the numbers, I'm gonna tell you that the autofocus for both of these cameras is fantastic. The a6400 has 425 phase and 425 contrast detection points, which cover 84% of the sensor. The M50 uses Canon's amazing dual pixel autofocus system, and it has somewhere between 99 and 143 autofocus points depending on which lens you use. For photography, the a6400 is faster and a bit more accurate, especially for continuous shooting. The eye autofocus has been good with both cameras, and I absolutely love the fact that I can shoot portraits without having to worry about getting the focus point exactly on the subject eye, and I can just concentrate on framing. If eyes are not detected, both cameras will revert back to face tracking. The a6400 does offer animal eye autofocus, which is really important to me because I take a lot of photos of my dogs, and traditional zone autofocus options would focus on the nose because it's closer to the camera. For video, I've always been a fan of Canon's dual pixel autofocus, and the M50 does not disappoint. I'm completely confident that when the camera is facing me, my face is being identified, it's being tracked, and there's going to be no hunting. The a6400 also has face tracking, which works really well, and I didn't experience the type of hunting that I sometimes got with old Sony models. Both cameras also offer subject tracking, which is great, and it can be activated using the touchscreen, but the M50 was easier to use in my opinion. So to recap, the a6400 has more autofocus points, which cover a larger portion of the sensor, has animal eye autofocus, and a faster optimal autofocus time, while the M50 has simpler to use autofocus modes and interface. Let's talk a little about the screen. The a6400 has a 3-inch 922,000 dot LCD tilting flip screen, so we can finally see ourselves when we're in front of the camera without using an external monitor. It's not the most elegant implementation, and if you want to know more about it, check out my detailed review, but it does okay. The M50 has a fully articulating touchscreen, and it can be tilted up, down, and to both sides. Plus, it can be turned 180 degrees to face the front. If you take into account different types of photography, using the camera on a slider and on a gimbal, there's no question that the advantage here goes to the M50 in terms of screen positioning. Both companies refer to their screens as touchscreens, but the M50 has a full touchscreen while the a6400 only has a partial one. On the M50, you can navigate the menu, you can select options and features from the screen, and touch or drag to focus. On the a6400, you can only use the touch functionality for focus, so once again, I'm going to give the advantage to the M50. Alright, the next set of features that I want to bring up have to do with audio. So both the a6400 and the M50 have an external mic input. So you can use an external microphone to get excellent audio right into the camera. A big advantage of the a6400 is that the audio level display is always available on the LCD when you're in movie mode. So as you're getting ready to record, and even while you're recording, you can see the audio levels and you can make adjustments to them while you're recording. On the M50, you have to go into the menu to see and adjust the audio levels before recording. You can't see them while you're recording, and you can't make adjustments to them without stopping the recording. So again, if you're shooting video, the a6400 wins when it comes to audio options. I recently put out a video discussing the importance of audio for video, and I'll link to it up in the corner and in the description. Moving on, I also wanted to talk about other features that these cameras have that may help you make a buying decision. First, I want to talk about image stabilization. The a6400 does not have image stabilization, so you'll have to rely on lens-based OSS. The M50 does not have sensor shifting in-body image stabilization, but it does offer in-body digital image stabilization, which can work together with lens-based IS. I will say that I normally don't rely on it, and I would rather use Warp Stabilizer in Premiere Pro. The next thing I want to talk about is the apps. The a6400 uses the Imaging Edge app, which is fairly basic. You can control shooting modes, shutter speed, aperture, ISO, white balance for both photography and video. For stills, you can also control the self-timer, continuous shooting setting, and there are some flash options. For video, you can adjust your frame rate, movie format, and you can start and stop recording. The biggest problem is that you can't see which autofocus mode is selected, and you can't change modes. You also can't see where the focus point is or select a focus point. So this makes the app useless for me when it comes to video, unless I'm only using it for framing and to start and stop the video. The Canon Camera Connect app gives you full functionality for both photography and video, which includes seeing and selecting focus modes and points. It is nice that both apps let you preview and transfer images and video to your mobile device. Now for me, I'm going to give the edge to the M50 when it comes to the apps because the focus feature on the app is critical for the way that I shoot. Okay, so which camera is a better value and which one should you get? And I always say that to make that decision, we need to discuss the cost. So at the time I'm making this video, the a6400 costs right under $900 and the M50 costs $629. So that's a big difference if you're looking at this price point. As we would expect, the a6400 has the advantage in many areas with better resolution and frame rate options, better video quality, more autofocus points, better low light performance, faster burst shooting, a larger buffer, more dials and custom buttons, a better battery life, no recording limit, a clean HDMI out, and some other features that we already covered. The M50 can do in-body time-lapse, it has a fully articulating real touchscreen, it's easier to use for beginners, offers digital image stabilization, uses a better app, and it's less expensive. I always say that you can't have everything in every camera, so it comes down to what's important to you. I do my best to answer every question, so if you have any questions about these cameras, just let me know in the comment section. I'll put some links in the description to where you can get the a6400 and the M50, as well as some popular kits and accessories. There are always holiday specials and discounts, so the links will be updated with the lowest pricing. If you end up ordering anything using those links, you can help support my channel for free and help me create more content for you, so thank you in advance. I also have links in the description to a more detailed video about the a6400 and the M50 in case you want to see an in-depth review. I really hope this video gave you a good comparison between the Sony a6400 and the Canon M50, and I'd love to hear in the comment section which option is best for you and why. If this video was helpful, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up, tweet it, share it, and if you haven't yet, join the community by hitting the subscribe and notification buttons. You can always find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Tech Gear Talk. And you know what I always say, buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.